The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Mom had collapsed at work. Massive stroke. The hospital's night supervisor spoke in that careful, practiced tone that medical professionals use when things are very bad. I threw on clothes and drove through empty streets, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. When I arrived at Mercy General, they led me to the ICU. Mom looked so small in that hospital bed, tubes running everywhere, machines beeping rhythms I didn't understand. The neurologist explained things using words like hemorrhagic and critical and uncertain prognosis. I nodded like I understood, but all I heard was the machine breathing for her. They said the next 72 hours would tell us everything. I called my fiancé, Brandon. He said he'd come after his morning meeting. Then I started making other calls. My sister, Heather. Brandon's parents. My best friend from college. One by one, I reached out to the people I thought would care. By dawn, I sat alone in the ICU waiting room. Nobody had come. Nobody. My name is Tina Marshall, and before that night, I thought I knew exactly who would show up when things got hard. I'm 31 years old, a senior accountant at Brennan and Associates, and I'd spent the last 3 years building what I thought was a solid life. Brandon Cole and I had been engaged for 8 months. We'd met at a charity fundraiser 2 years earlier. He was charming, successful, ambitious. He worked in commercial real estate development and always talked about his next big deal. His parents, Howard and Lucille Cole, were old money. The kind of family with a country club membership going back 3 generations. They'd never quite warmed to me. I came from working-class roots. Mom had raised Heather and me alone after Dad left when I was 7. She'd worked double shifts as a nurse to put us through school. Everything I had, I'd earned myself. Brandon said he loved that about me, my independence, my strength. Looking back now, I wonder if he actually loved those things, or if he just saw someone he could use. By Wednesday afternoon, Mom was still unconscious. The doctor said her brain was swelling. They'd induced a coma to help her heal. I sat beside her bed, holding her hand, talking to her even though she couldn't hear me. The ICU allowed visitors for 15 minutes every 2 hours. I used every single window. Between visits, I camped in the waiting room, surviving on vending machine coffee and anxiety. My phone kept buzzing. Work emails, wedding vendor confirmations. Regular life continued while mine had stopped completely. Brandon texted around noon. Stuck in meetings all day. How's your mom? I stared at that message for a long time before responding. Critical, still unconscious. His reply came 20 minutes later. Hang in there, babe. I'll try to swing by tomorrow. Try. Like visiting your fiancé's dying mother in the ICU was something you'd attempt if your schedule allowed. I turned my phone face down and went back to holding Mom's hand. The nurse, an older woman named Pauline, brought me a heated blanket. You should go home and sleep, she said gently. We'll call if anything changes. I shook my head. I'm staying. Heather finally showed up Wednesday evening. My younger sister breezed into the ICU waiting room wearing designer sunglasses and carrying a Starbucks cup. She looked perfect, as always. Heather had married money 2 years ago. Her husband, Craig, owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. They lived in a mansion in the suburbs and spent their weekends at yacht clubs. Sorry I'm late, she said, not sounding sorry at all. Craig had a golf tournament and I couldn't find anyone to watch the dogs. Our mother was dying and she'd been at a golf tournament. I felt something crack inside my chest. Did you see her yet? I asked. Heather made a face. Is she awake? Can she talk? No, she's in an induced coma. Oh, Heather said, checking her phone. Well, maybe I should come back when she can actually know I'm here. Hospitals freak me out anyway. She stayed exactly 12 minutes. Long enough to ask if Mom had a will, then she left. I sat in that empty waiting room and felt completely alone. This was my family. This was the support system I'd counted on. It was Thursday morning when Brandon finally called, and the conversation changed everything. I answered on the first ring, desperate to hear a caring voice. Tina, we need to talk, Brandon said. No greeting, no asking about Mom, just straight into whatever was on his mind. I'm at the hospital, I said quietly. Can this wait? No, it really can't. He sounded irritated, like I was being difficult. It's about the wedding. The wedding was 4 months away. We'd booked a venue, hired a photographer, sent save the dates. I'd been so careful with the budget, tracking every expense in detailed spreadsheets. My accounting brain couldn't help it. What about the wedding? I asked, watching a doctor rush past with a crash cart. I need $20,000, Brandon said flatly. The words didn't make sense at first. I actually pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at it like that would help me understand. What? 20,000. I need it by Monday. My brain struggled to process this. Why? Why do you think? He snapped. The venue needs the final payment. The caterer needs their deposit. My flowers, the band, everything's due. These are our wedding expenses. I'd been managing our wedding budget in a shared spreadsheet. Every vendor, every payment, every due date. I knew exactly what was owed and when. The venue's final payment wasn't due until 6 weeks before the wedding. The caterer had already received their deposit. Something was wrong. Brandon, I checked the spreadsheet last week. Nothing major is due until August. He laughed, but it wasn't a nice sound. That spreadsheet is outdated. Things changed. Vendors want money up front now. I felt my stomach twist. What vendors? All of them, he said impatiently. Look, I don't have time to explain every detail. I need you to transfer 20,000 from your savings by Monday morning. My savings. The account I'd built over 10 years. Money I'd saved from every paycheck, every bonus, every tax refund. That was my emergency fund. My safety net. My mother was in the ICU fighting for her life, and my fiancé was demanding my life savings. Brandon, my mom might die, I whispered. I can't think about this right now. Well, you need to, he shot back. These are legally binding contracts. If we don't pay, we lose our deposits. That's 40,000 down the drain. How was that my problem? We'd agreed to split costs 50-50. His family had money. Why was this suddenly urgent? I need to see the invoices, I said, my accounting instincts kicking in. Invoices? Brandon's voice went cold. You don't trust me. That's not what I said. I just need to understand what changed. Nothing changed except vendors getting nervous about payment. This is normal wedding stuff, Tina. Stop being paranoid. But I wasn't paranoid. I was trained to spot financial irregularities, and everything about this felt irregular. Send me the updated vendor emails and invoices. I'll review them tonight. For God's sake, Brandon exploded. Your mother's in the hospital and you're worried about paperwork. Just trust me and send the money. The irony of him using Mom's condition against me wasn't lost. He hadn't visited her once. Hadn't asked how I was holding up. Hadn't offered any support. But he wanted $20,000 by Monday. I'll think about it, I said carefully. Think fast, he replied, clocks ticking, and he hung up. I sat there in the ICU waiting room, phone in my hand, feeling like I'd just been slapped. Something was very, very wrong. I opened my laptop and accessed our shared wedding folder. Time to do what I did best. Investigate the numbers. The wedding spreadsheet hadn't been updated in 3 weeks. I checked the edit history. Brandon hadn't touched it since early April. Every vendor contract was in the shared folder. I opened them one by one. The venue's payment schedule showed the final balance due August 15th, 6 weeks before our October wedding, exactly as I remembered. The caterer had been paid their 50% deposit in March. The next payment wasn't due until September. The florist, the photographer, the DJ all had clear payment schedules. Nothing major was due now. I checked my email for any vendor communications. Nothing. I checked the wedding planning email account we shared. Also nothing. Brandon was lying. The question was why. I closed my laptop and thought about the past few months. Brandon had been stressed lately. Distracted. He'd mentioned some deal at work that wasn't going well. A commercial property development that had hit complications. But he'd been vague about details. His parents had been acting strange too. Lucille had canceled our last 3 lunch dates. Howard had stopped asking about the wedding. When I'd mentioned it at Easter dinner, they'd exchanged a look I couldn't read. My phone buzzed, a text from Brandon. Did you transfer the money yet? It was barely an hour since we'd talked. The urgency felt desperate. I didn't respond. By Thursday night, Mom's condition hadn't changed. The swelling in her brain had stabilized, the doctor said, but they couldn't wake her yet. Too risky. I need you to be patient, he told me. Your mother's body needs time to heal. Patience felt impossible when every moment might be the last. I sat beside her bed during visiting hours, holding her papery hand. Mom, I whispered, if you can hear me, I need your advice. Brandon's asking for money, a lot of money, and something feels wrong. Mom had never fully approved of Brandon. She'd been polite, gracious even, but I'd caught her looking at him sometimes with an expression I couldn't read. Concerned, maybe, or worried. After one Sunday dinner, she'd pulled me aside. That young man is very focused on money, she'd said carefully. Just make sure he's focused on you too. I'd brushed it off. Brandon was ambitious, I'd told her. That wasn't a flaw. Now I wondered if Mom had seen something I'd missed. I checked my phone. 5 more texts from Brandon, each one more demanding than the last. We need to talk about the money. Stop ignoring me. This is important. Our wedding is at stake. Are you seriously going to let your mom's situation ruin our future? That last one made my hands shake. Friday morning brought unexpected support from an unlikely source. Pauline, the ICU nurse who'd been caring for Mom, found me in the waiting room. "You look exhausted," she said, sitting beside me. "When's the last time you ate something that wasn't from a vending machine?" I couldn't remember. She handed me a homemade sandwich wrapped in foil. "My husband makes extra lunch for me. You need real food." I almost cried at that small kindness. "Thank you." Pauline studied me with sharp, knowing eyes. What else is wrong, besides the obvious? I found myself telling her about Brandon. The $20,000, his absence, his texts. When I finished, she shook her head slowly. "My daughter went through something similar," she said. Fiancé claimed he needed money for their future. Turned out he'd gambled away his savings and was trying to cover it before anyone found out. My stomach dropped. Brandon doesn't gamble. Maybe not, Pauline agreed. But men who demand money urgently while someone's dying in ICU, they're usually hiding something. You should look deeper. I already had been, but maybe not deep enough. I pulled out my laptop and opened a browser. Time to do some real research. I started with public records, property filings, court documents, business registrations, all the databases I knew from my accounting work. Brandon's name appeared on a commercial property development filed 6 months ago. A strip mall renovation in the industrial district. His company had been listed as primary investor. I dug deeper. The property development told a story Brandon had never mentioned. The project had been financed through a combination of investors and bank loans. Work had started in January. By March, the project was already over budget. By April, the primary contractor had filed a lien. The bank had frozen additional funding pending investigation. Brandon's investment firm was exposed for nearly $300,000, with no way to recoup it if the project failed. I sat back, my mind racing. This was why he needed $20,000, not for wedding vendors, for his failing business deal. He was trying to use our wedding money to cover his losses. Rage flooded through me, hot and sharp. My mother was dying, and he was trying to steal from me to fix his mistakes. I kept digging. The deeper I went, the worse it got. Brandon had personally guaranteed some of the project loans. If the development collapsed completely, he'd be liable for hundreds of thousands. His perfect, ambitious facade was crumbling, and he thought he could use me to catch the pieces. My phone rang. Brandon again. This time I answered. "We need to talk," I said coldly. "About the real reason you need $20,000. Silence. "Then I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do. I found the property records, the liens, everything." More silence. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. "Okay. We should discuss this in person. Come to my apartment tonight." I wasn't going to his apartment. Instead, I sent him a text. "Meet me at Morrison's coffee shop. 7 p.m. public location. Neutral ground. I needed witnesses." He tried to argue, but I didn't budge. At 6:30, I left the hospital for the first time in 3 days. Pauline promised to call if anything changed with Mom. I drove to the coffee shop, my hands steady on the wheel. Something had shifted inside me. The fear and confusion had crystallized into cold, focused anger. Brandon was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table. He looked tired, worried. "Good." I sat across from him without greeting. "Explain," I said. He tried charm first. "Tina, babe, you have to understand. Business deals go sideways sometimes. This is just temporary. I'm not your babe right now. Explain why you lied about wedding vendors needing money." His jaw tightened. "I didn't lie. I just simplified." "You lied," I repeated. "You made up a story about vendor deposits to steal from my savings account. That's fraud. It's not fraud when it's for our shared future." "A failing strip mall development isn't our shared future." I leaned forward. "How much are you into this project for?" "That's complicated. Try me. I'm an accountant." He shifted uncomfortably. 300,000, plus personal guarantees on another 200. "If this goes under, you're financially destroyed." Essentially. Which is why I need help to save it. Brandon laid out his plan like a business proposal. The project just needed more capital to finish. With 20,000, he could pay the most pressing creditors, get work moving again. Then he'd flip the property quickly, recoup everything, and we'd be fine. It was a fantasy. I'd seen enough business failures to know how this ended. Throwing good money after bad. "But you told me it was for the wedding," I said quietly. Because I knew you wouldn't give it to me for the business, so you lied. I had to, he insisted. You're so cautious with money, you never take risks because I don't have a safety net like you do. I built everything myself, and you were willing to destroy that to save your deal. He reached across the table. I was going to pay you back after the flip with interest. When it sells. Maybe 6 months, a year. I pulled my hand away. My mother is in the ICU. You haven't visited once. Haven't asked how I'm doing, but you've texted me 14 times about money. That's different, he protested. The wedding stuff is time sensitive. My mother's life is time sensitive. He had no response to that. The silence stretched between us. I thought about the man I'd agreed to marry. The charming, ambitious Brandon I'd fallen for. Had he ever really existed? Or had I just seen what I wanted to see? I'm not giving you the money, I said finally. Brandon's expression hardened. Then we'll lose everything, all our wedding deposits. We'll lose them anyway, because I'm calling off the wedding. The words came out calmer than I felt. Brandon stared at me. You're not serious, completely serious. You lied to me. You tried to manipulate me during the worst crisis of my life. Why would I marry someone like that? He shifted tactics. Tina, you're emotional right now. Your mom's situation has you stressed. We can work through this. There's nothing to work through. We're done. Panic flashed across his face. You can't just cancel a wedding 4 months out. What will people think? I leaned back. That's your concern? What people think? My reputation matters. My family has standing in this community. Then maybe your family can help with your failing business deal. My family doesn't know, he admitted, about how bad it is. They think everything's fine. Of course they did. Brandon was all about appearances. The successful businessman, the perfect fiancé, all facade, nothing real. I stood up. I'm going back to the hospital. Don't contact me again unless it's through my lawyer. Wait, he grabbed my wrist. You can't do this. We had plans. Your plans involved stealing from me. His grip tightened. I'm warning you, Tina. If you embarrass me by calling off this wedding, there will be consequences. I looked at his hand on my wrist, then at his face. Let go, now. He did, but his expression stayed threatening. You'll regret this. I drove back to the hospital with shaking hands. Not from fear, from rage, from relief. From the overwhelming weight of a decision I should have made months ago. When I walked into the ICU waiting room, Pauline took one look at my face and nodded. You did the right thing. I hope so. I checked on Mom. No change. I settled into my familiar chair and pulled out my phone. Time to handle the practical matters. First, I emailed our wedding photographer explaining the engagement had ended. We'd lose the deposit, but I could live with that. Then the venue, the caterer, the florist. Each email felt like lifting weight off my shoulders. Next, I called my bank. I need to freeze my accounts, I told them. Add password protection. Nobody gets access except me. The representative asked questions. I explained my fiancé had been pressuring me for money and I needed protection. They flagged my accounts immediately. Finally, I texted Heather. Brandon and I are done. Please don't ask questions. Her response came quickly. About time. Mom never liked him. I almost laughed. Even from a coma, Mom was being proven right. My phone buzzed. Brandon's mother, Lucille. Tina, Brandon told us there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we should talk. I deleted it without responding. An hour later, Howard called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was brief and cold. I hope you realize what you're throwing away. Our family doesn't take kindly to public embarrassment. The threats were starting. I forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer friend, Amanda. Might need your help, I texted. Call me tomorrow. Her response was immediate. Already on it. Whatever you need. Saturday brought a miracle. Mom's brain swelling had reduced enough to try waking her. The medical team gathered in her ICU room. I stood against the wall, too terrified to breathe. They adjusted medications, reduced sedation, and waited. It took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of watching monitors and praying. Then Mom's fingers twitched, her eyelids fluttered. She made a small sound. Mom, I moved to her bedside. Can you hear me? Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. She looked around, confused by the tubes and machines. Then her gaze found mine. She couldn't talk around the breathing tube, but she squeezed my hand. Tears streamed down my face. Welcome back. The next hours were busy with tests and assessments. The neurologist was cautiously optimistic. Your mother has significant recovery ahead. But she's beating the odds so far. They removed the breathing tube that afternoon. Mom's voice was scratchy and weak. What happened? Stroke, I explained gently. You collapsed at work Tuesday night. She processed this slowly. How long? 4 days. Her eyes widened. You've been here the whole time. I nodded. Where else would I be? Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes. Brandon, I hesitated. That's a longer conversation. We'll talk when you're stronger. She studied my face with a mother's intuition. Something happened. Later, I promised. Right now, just focus on getting better, but Mom was persistent. Tell me, so I did, briefly, carefully. About Brandon's demands and lies. About calling off the wedding. Mom listened to the whole story without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Good, she finally said. I never trusted him. You didn't. I thought you liked him. I was polite to him, Mom corrected. Big difference. She shifted slightly in bed, wincing. That boy was always calculating, always watching what people had instead of who they were. I squeezed her hand. Why didn't you say something? Would you have listened? Probably not, I admitted. Exactly. Some lessons you have to learn yourself. She coughed and I helped her sip water through a straw. But I'm glad you learned it before the wedding instead of after. Me too. Over the next few hours, Mom drifted in and out of sleep. Each time she woke, she seemed a little stronger, a little more herself. The doctors were amazed by her progress. During one of her sleeping periods, Heather finally returned to the hospital. She brought flowers and guilt. I'm sorry I wasn't here, she said quietly. Craig and I have been having problems. I've been avoiding everything. That's not an excuse. No, it's not, but I appreciate you saying it. We sat together in the waiting room. Heather asked about Brandon. I gave her the full story. When I finished, she whistled low. His family's going to make this ugly. You know that, right? The Coles don't lose gracefully. I'm prepared. How? I saved every text, every email, every lie documented. And I've already talked to Amanda, my lawyer friend. Heather nodded slowly, looking impressed. When did you get so ruthless? When someone tried to steal from me while Mom was dying. Sunday morning brought the first legal letter. Brandon's family had retained Morrison and Associates, an expensive law firm known for aggressive tactics. The letter, delivered via email, demanded I honor my verbal commitment to provide funds for joint wedding expenses. It threatened legal action for breach of promise. I forwarded it to Amanda with a simple note. This is what I meant. She called immediately. They have no case, she said bluntly. Verbal promises about wedding expenses aren't enforceable contracts. And even if they were, you have evidence he lied about what the money was for, so they're just trying to scare me. Exactly. Rich families do this. They use expensive lawyers to intimidate, but we have something better. What? Documentation, truth. And the fact that Brandon admitted to fraud in a public coffee shop with security cameras. I felt a weight lift. So what do? Nothing. Let me handle it. I'll send a response that'll make them reconsider this approach. While Amanda dealt with the legal threats, I focused on Mom. She was moved out of ICU into a regular room, a good sign. The neurologist explained she'd need weeks of rehabilitation, physical therapy for her weakened left side, speech therapy for some lingering word-finding issues, but she was alive, recovering. That was everything. I took a leave of absence from work. My boss, Kevin, was understanding. Family first, he said. Your job will be here when you're ready. I spent my days at the hospital, helping Mom with exercises, reading to her, watching terrible daytime TV together, normal things that felt precious after almost losing her. Brandon tried calling 15 times that week. I blocked his number. He tried emailing. I filtered those to spam. He showed up at the hospital Tuesday afternoon. Security escorted him out after I explained we'd ended our engagement and I didn't want contact. He tried one more approach. He sent his mother. Lucille appeared in Mom's hospital room Wednesday morning, all expensive perfume and forced smiles. Tina, dear, we need to discuss this misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I said calmly. Brandon lied to me. We're done. Surely you're being dramatic. He made a simple mistake under stress. He tried to steal $20,000 while my mother was in ICU. That's not a mistake. Mom, who'd been quiet in her bed, spoke up. Her voice was still weak but clear. My daughter said leave. Lucille turned to her, surprised. Mrs. Marshall, I didn't realize you were awake. I'm awake. And I'm telling you what my daughter is too polite to say. Get out of this room. But we need to resolve this situation. It's resolved, Mom said firmly. Your son showed his character. My daughter is smart enough to recognize it. Now leave before I call the nurse. Lucille's composure cracked. Do you have any idea what kind of family you're insulting? The kind that raised a liar, Mom replied. That's exactly the kind of family Tina should avoid. Lucille left, her heels clicking sharply against the linoleum. When she was gone, I hugged Mom carefully. Thank you. She patted my hand. I've been wanting to tell that woman off for 2 years. Amanda's response to the Cole family lawyers was a masterpiece. I read it 3 times, savoring every carefully worded paragraph. She'd included a detailed timeline of Brandon's lies. copies of his texts demanding money, evidence of his failing business deal from public records, documentation that he'd misrepresented wedding vendor requirements, and a formal notice that any further contact would be considered harassment. The letter ended with a polite suggestion that Brandon focus on his creditors rather than his ex-fiancée. It worked. The legal threats stopped, but the social fallout was just beginning. The Cole family had connections throughout the city. They started spreading their version of events. Tina had a breakdown, called off the wedding irrationally, left Brandon devastated at a vulnerable time. I heard the whispers through mutual friends. At first, it hurt. Then I realized something important. The people who believed those rumors without asking my side weren't really my friends. The ones who mattered reached out, asked what happened, believed me when I explained. My circle got smaller but stronger. Work colleagues I'd barely known sent supportive messages. My book club rallied around me. Even my dentist's receptionist, who'd heard the gossip, pulled me aside during a checkup. "That family has a reputation," she whispered. "You dodged a bullet." The comments validated what I'd suspected. The Coles' perfect image hid darker realities. People who'd dealt with them before weren't surprised by Brandon's behavior. I wish someone had warned me, but maybe I wouldn't have listened. Sometimes you have to learn the hard way. Mom came home from the hospital 3 weeks after her stroke. We'd converted the downstairs guest room into a bedroom for her. Physical therapists came daily. She couldn't drive yet, couldn't work, but she was alive and improving. I moved back home temporarily to help. It felt right, being in my childhood house, taking care of the woman who'd taken care of me. We fell into comfortable routines, morning exercises, afternoon therapy sessions, evening card games while we watched her favorite shows. One evening, while we were playing gin rummy, Mom brought up Brandon. "Do you regret it?" "Calling off the wedding?" "Never," I said honestly. "I regret not seeing who he really was sooner." She laid down a card. "Love makes us optimistic. We see potential instead of reality." "Is that what happened with Dad?" I asked. "We rarely talked about my father." Mom was quiet for a moment. "Partly. Your father was charming and exciting. I thought he'd settle down, become responsible." She shook her head. "But people don't change unless they want to, and he never wanted to. He wanted the fun without the work. Like Brandon, exactly like Brandon." She won the hand and gathered the cards. "You're stronger than I was at your age. You walked away. I stayed too long hoping things would improve." I squeezed her hand. "You did what you thought was right. And you raised 2 daughters who learned from watching you. One of them learned anyway." We both looked toward Heather's contact name on my phone. My sister had visited twice since Mom came home. Brief, uncomfortable visits where she checked her phone constantly. "She's young," Mom said. "She'll figure things out eventually. Or not." 2 months after Mom's stroke, my life had found a new rhythm. I returned to work part-time. Mom had regained most of her mobility. She was even talking about going back to nursing, though her doctors said to wait. I'd moved back to my apartment but visited daily. The wedding that should have happened in October never crossed my mind. I was too busy living. One Saturday, I ran into Melissa, Brandon's secretary, at the grocery store. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me. "Tina, hi." "Hi, Melissa." She hesitated, then spoke quickly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." "For what?" "For not saying something sooner." She glanced around like Brandon might appear. "I knew about the property development, how bad it was. I processed invoices and saw the letters from creditors. It wasn't your place to tell me. Maybe not. But I felt guilty watching him lie to you." She bit her lip. "For what it's worth, things got worse after you left. The project collapsed completely last month." Lost everything. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing that, just a distant sadness. "Is he okay?" "Financially destroyed, had to move back with his parents. He's working at his father's firm now in a junior position." She paused. "He tells people you sabotaged him, that you knew about his problems and abandoned him maliciously." "Of course he does," I said calmly. "Some people never take responsibility." Melissa nodded. "I quit last week. Couldn't work for someone like that anymore." "Good for you." We parted ways. I finished my shopping thinking about accountability. Brandon had blamed me for his failures, just like he'd probably blame everyone except himself. 6 months after Mom's stroke, I got an unexpected message. From Brandon. It came through LinkedIn since I'd blocked him everywhere else. "Tina, I owe you an apology, a real one. I was wrong about everything. I let business failures cloud my judgment. I lied to you when you needed support. I tried to use you to fix my mistakes. That was unforgivable. You deserve better. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything." I just wanted you to know I finally understand what I destroyed. And I'm sorry, I wish you well, I read it twice. It sounded genuine. Growth maybe, or just regret I didn't respond. Some apologies don't need acknowledgement. They're for the apologizer's peace, not the wronged person's healing. I'd already healed, moved forward, found my footing again. Mom saw me reading it. What's that? Message from Brandon, apologizing. She raised an eyebrow. Decent of him, I guess. You going to respond? No point. She nodded approval. That's my girl. That evening, I updated my dating profile for the first time since the breakup. Not because I was desperate to date, just because I was finally ready. Open to possibilities. My profile was honest. 32-year-old accountant. Recently ended engagement after fiancé showed his true colors. Looking for someone genuine. Someone who shows up. Someone who understands that love means supporting each other through hard times, not exploiting them. If you're that person, let's talk. It felt empowering. Nomming what I wanted, refusing to settle, the responses came quickly. Some jerks, some players, but also some genuinely interesting people. I went on a few dates, nothing serious, just practicing being myself again, learning to trust my instincts. 1 year after Mom's stroke, we threw a celebration, nothing fancy, just family and close friends at Mom's house. She'd returned to nursing part-time. Light duty, but she was back doing what she loved. Heather came, surprisingly. She'd separated from Craig 2 months earlier, finally admitted their marriage was empty. She and I were rebuilding our relationship slowly. At the party, Mom pulled me aside. I'm proud of you, she said, for handling everything with such strength. I learned from the best. She hugged me tight. You know what the scariest part of the stroke was? Physically, I mean, what? That moment when I realized I might die, and my biggest regret wasn't anything I'd done. It was things I'd left unsaid. She pulled back to look at me, so I'm saying this now. You are the strongest, smartest, most capable person I know. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than that. I cried then. Happy tears, relief tears, tears for everything we'd survived. Later, my friend Amanda found me on the back porch. You doing okay? Better than okay, I said honestly. Good, she grinned, because I have news. What kind of news? Brandon's family firm is being investigated. Financial irregularities. Apparently, Brandon's bad business decisions were just the tip of a very corrupt iceberg. I raised my eyebrows. Karma. Amanda nodded. Thought you'd appreciate that. The party wound down. People left with full stomachs and warm feelings. I stayed to help Mom clean up. As we washed dishes together, she said quietly, you know what I realized during my recovery? What? That stroke was horrible, but it also showed me what really matters. And what's that? People who show up, who stay, who love you not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard. I bumped her shoulder gently. Yeah, that's what matters. 2 years after that ICU nightmare, I'm living a completely different life. Mom's back to full-time nursing. Healthy and strong. Heather's divorce is final. She's dating someone new, someone kind who treats her well. I made partner at my accounting firm. My specialty became helping people protect their assets during major life transitions, divorces, deaths, business failures. I understood financial vulnerability now, knew how to shield people from it, and I met someone. His name is Alex. He's a teacher, makes a fraction of what Brandon did, drives an old Honda, lives in a modest apartment. But when Mom had a health scare last month, just a minor thing, Alex was at the hospital with me within 20 minutes. No questions, no hesitation, just support. That's how I knew he was different. We're taking things slow. No rush toward marriage or big commitments, just building something real, solid, based on trust instead of fantasy. Sometimes I think about that phone call. Brandon demanding $20,000 while Mom fought for her life. How it felt like my world was ending. But actually, it was just beginning. The old life built on false foundations had to crumble, so I could build something real. Mom was right all along. Some lessons you have to learn yourself. And I learned mine in the ICU waiting room. When crisis reveals character. When you discover who really matters. When you find strength you didn't know you had. I'm grateful for all of it now. The pain, the betrayal, the hard choices. Because they led me here, to this life, to this version of myself, to people who show up and stay. That's what matters, that's everything.